Grug was a simple caveman. Simple in the sense that if you handed him 2 rocks and asked him to build a shelter, he'd try to eat one and throw the other at a bird. This was just his process. But on this particular morning, Grug was about to make history. He just didn't know it yet. He was hungry. Again. Always. So he did what he always did. He spotted a lizard and started running after it. Full sprint. Arms flailing, making sounds that I can only describe as an angry boulder with asthma. The lizard was fast. Disrespectfully fast. Grug got so furious that he picked up the nearest rock and hurled it with everything he had. The throw was terrible. Never stood a chance. The rock sailed elegantly past the lizard, smashed into the cliffside, and caused a tiny landslide. Just a puff of dirt and a bunch of seeds got swallowed up by the soil. Whatever. Grug forgot about it instantly and went to go punch a tree for wasting his time. But then, a few weeks later, he walked past that same spot and froze. His tiny brain nearly short-circuited. Where there was once just dirt, there was now food, just growing there, in a row, on purpose. He squinted, he poked it, he sniffed it. He didn't understand a single thing about what had happened, but that's never stopped him before. Paws twos. He pounded his chest and let out a victory screech that echoed for miles. In his mind, he had just invented agriculture, the Dirt Food Command. Size, a true pioneer. Some other generic caveman nearby glanced over, saw Grug flexing at a patch of plants, and slowly backed away. Smart guy. But Grug's mind was already racing. There was food just sitting here. And if food could just exist, then the next logical step, obviously, was to give it to other people. For rocks? For other food? He wasn't sure about that part yet. What he was sure about was that his cave was about to become something glorious, something no one had ever seen before. A place where tired, hungry people could gather, sit down, and let him handle the food. The first eating spot in the history of ever. A restaurant. What could possibly go wrong? Paws twos. So Grug got to work. He dragged a giant flat rock right into the middle of his cave. Took him half the morning, grunting and sweating, scraping his knuckles raw. But when it was finally in place, he stepped back, chest heaving, and just admired it. This wasn't just a rock. This was a fancy rock. For fancy eat seat. He patted it twice, nodded slowly, and said, "Table. World's first table. World's first restaurant." He was basically a genius. Next problem. What to serve? He hadn't thought that far ahead. But Grug was a problem solver. A visionary. He wandered to the back of the cave, sniffing the air, and found it. An old, blackened leg of something. Looked like it had been in a fire about 3 moons ago. Hard as a club. Grug picked it up, gave it a sniff, and his eyes went wide. Perfect. He carried it to the entrance, set it on a smaller rock, and pointed at it with both hands like he was presenting treasure. Then he grabbed another rock, scratched a picture on it, and propped it up outside. The picture showed a stick man running from flames. Below it, he scratched some shapes that sort of looked like words if you squinted, and had no idea what words were. He called it the Premium Smoked Longfoot with Ancient Char. Ancient. Char. Say it slow. Sounds important. When a few curious cavemen gathered near the cave, Grug stepped out, puffed up his chest, and bellowed, "Grug Cave Eat Spot is open!" The cavemen just stared. One of them pointed at the menu rock. Another squinted into the dark cave. It smelled like burnt dirt and old bones, which, to be fair, it was. Grug gestured wildly at the fancy eat-seat rock, grinning a toothy, slightly unhinged grin. The crowd exchanged looks. This was either a historic moment or a terrible mistake. Nobody moved, so Grug grabbed the nearest caveman by the shoulder, guided him inside, and pushed him down onto the fancy rock. The caveman's eyes darted around. Bones on the floor, smoke stains on the ceiling, a suspicious puddle in the corner. But Grug was already clapping his hands together, bouncing on his heels, absolutely buzzing. "Grug, make food now," he announced, and disappeared into the dark. Pause. Threes. This was where the magic happened. Grug grabbed the premium smoked Longfoot and stared at it with the intensity of someone who genuinely believed he was about to change the world. He placed it on a slab of stone. Then he paused. Something was missing. Heat, probably. Fire was good. Fire made things taste like, well, like fire. And more fire meant more taste. This was basic cave logic. He dragged over an entire burning log from the fire pit. It was huge. Sparks flew everywhere. He didn't place the meat near the fire. He placed the fire on the meat. Just dropped the log right on top of it and stood back, arms crossed, satisfied. Within seconds, the cave filled with thick, black smoke. The customer at the fancy rock coughed. Then another one coughed. Grug, standing in the middle of his own accidental smoke storm, squinted through the haze and gave them a big thumbs up. "Smell that," he said, inhaling deeply. That smell of professional. He didn't know that word, obviously, but he felt it in his bones. When the smoke cleared enough to see, Grug lifted the log. The Longfoot was now, well, it was less of a foot and more of a black, smoking lump. If you hit someone with it, they'd stay hit. But Grug beamed at it like it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever created. He grabbed a sharp rock, sawed off a chunk, and slammed it onto a flat piece of bark. World's first plate. He marched to the table, dropped the bark in front of the customer, and stepped back proudly. Steam, or maybe just smoke, curled off the black lump. The caveman leaned forward, poked it. It made a sound like tapping a rock. "Eat," Grug said. "Is best. Grug promise." The caveman tried to bite it. His teeth slid off. He tried again. Nothing. He looked up at Grug, genuinely confused. Grug misinterpreted this as awe. Pause. Twos. "See?" Grug said, nodding. "Too good for one bite. Must savor." He genuinely believed that. The food wasn't inedible. It was just challenging. For advanced eaters. The customer sat there, defeated, holding a piece of charcoal that had once been meat, while Grug went back to the kitchen area to prepare the next disaster. And the disasters were just getting started. A group of 3 cavemen tried to leave quietly. They'd had enough. They slipped off their rocks and tiptoed toward the cave entrance. Grug spotted them instantly. Pause. Twos. "Ah, more customers," he shouted. "You wait for dessert?" He grabbed a handful of mud and slapped it onto a hot rock. Then he found some old berries, looked at them, sniffed them, shrugged. He crushed the berries into the mud with his fist and shaped it into a lumpy blob. Pause. Twos. "Sweet mud rock," he announced proudly. "Very rare." The 3 cavemen stared at the sizzling mud cake. One of them pretended to be asleep. Another just walked into the cave wall. Any escape was better than dessert. Behind them, the kitchen was now a full disaster zone. Smoke everywhere. A random lizard had wandered in and immediately passed out. Grug saw this and nodded. Pause. Twos. "Restaurant has atmosphere," he said to himself. "Very authentic." He didn't know what atmosphere meant. He'd just invented the word earlier that morning. But he knew, deep in his bones, that this mess meant quality. Smoke was flavor. Panic was excitement. Empty plates meant satisfaction, and everyone had empty plates. Finally, the last customer stumbled out. They were all gone. The cave was quiet. Ashes drifted through the air. A single bone hung from the ceiling, spinning slowly. The mud dessert had hardened into something resembling a weapon. Pause. Tu haze. Grug stood in the middle of the cave, surveying the carnage. He rolled a massive boulder to the entrance and scratched 4 simple words into it with a sharp rock. He stood back. He read his own work. He nodded with the deep satisfaction of a man who had changed history forever. That rock read, "Best food in world." He had no customers. He had no food. He had no clue what he was doing. But Grug looked at his empty, smoky, ruined cave restaurant and saw perfection. Somewhere, thousands of years in the future, a health inspector felt a sudden, unexplained shiver down their spine.